Welcome to In Good Company, where relationships drive results, with your host, Lisa Kilray. In each episode, we explore how great leaders build trust, inspire teams, and turn meaningful connections into real success.
Hi, I'm Lisa Kilray, host of In Good Company, where relationships drive results. Today's episode is sponsored by WSI. At WSI, we help manufacturers and B2B businesses build the strategic foundation they need for AI-driven digital growth. Our work spans digital strategy and roadmaps, SEO, content development, and AI search across large language models to attract qualified leads. Recently, I find interesting, I had a conversation with a client who we started with a few years ago, and she said, "I'm so glad we began this when we did with you." In fact, I will say that early strategy is exactly what they needed to start showing up across AI search and those large language models, which has allowed them to attract leads from around the globe for their equipment that they manufacture that is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. To learn more, visit www.wsi-manufacturing-marketing.com. And now let's transition into today's conversation. Today I'm joined by Eric Strickler. Eric is a marketing and operations manufacturing leader at Functional Devices, a manufacturer of electronic control products used in HVAC, building automation, and industrial control systems. Functional Devices is known for solutions that support reliable control and safe operations in real-world applications with a strong focus on quality, performance, and ease of installation. In Eric's role, he helps guide the growth in operations and strategy and execution with a focus on scalable processes, strong cross-functional alignment, and continuous improvement. His leadership experience is rooted in high-growth environments which depend on clarity, accountability, and well-designed systems. Eric, let's jump into you and stop listening to me talk.
Yeah.
You've been with Functional Devices has been around for nearly 60 years and has a history of being made in the USA as a manufacturing company. For those who aren't familiar, how do you describe what Functional Devices does and who you serve?
Sure. Simply put, we are building electronic components that are put into larger control systems, whether it's commercial or industrial HVAC applications. There are some level of building automation controller systems that we plug into as well. We're more of a piece of the greater puzzle that is building automation and building automation systems.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah, it's been
great.
fun. It's been a fun company to be a part of. It's really impressive to see the number of SKUs that our team can push through our production.
And how long have you been with Functional Devices?
So I'm coming up on two
Approximately.
years now. Yeah, we're coming up
Okay,
on 2 years.
awesome. Congrats.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you.
and manufacturing in the US at scale isn't easy. From your perspective, what has allowed Functional Devices to stay relevant and competitive for decades while maintaining that commitment while so many other companies are outsourcing overseas?
It really boils down to staying customer focused. You hear a lot of companies say that, but it really is true.
Hmm.
I wouldn't say customer is king in that cliche phrase for us, but that's certainly the attitude that we take, whether you are the CEO down to the person that may be assisting with building some of the products on the line. Everybody takes that same mentality, and we share our celebrations when we achieve that.
Awesome. So when customers come to you, what problems are they really trying to solve that you're helping provide that solution for?
Yeah, so again, our components that we build are part of a larger ecosystem, right? And there's beauty in it in their simplicity, but there's also some pain that exists. And if you have a product like ours that fails, the entire system fails, right? So it's think of a vehicle. and maybe you have a spark plug go out. Well, that one tiny
Hmm.
part impacts the rest of the vehicle operating. And that's ultimately kind of how you can view ours a little bit. So when customers are coming to us, they're looking for, um, you know, ease in simplistic installations, and that goes as part of our product in its own right. We're building things as one enclosed unit, so it's sort of a plug and play approach. So
Okay.
that's part one. The other one is, the quality that we offer. We 100% test every product that we assemble on site before it leaves our building. So it's known that if you are utilizing a functional devices product, you're very unlikely to experience a failure in the field. I think our running tally over the last 4 years is it's a little bit less than one in 16,000 products experience a failure in the field of our running
Wow.
tally. Pretty impressive when we're producing,
Yep.
4 point something million products a year.
Okay. That is impressive. So you're probably best known for your relay in a box line. When you think about it, why does that product family endure for so long? And what does it reveal about how functional devices approaches product design and customer needs? I mean, kind of ties into this extremely low failure rate that you just mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what it boiled down to, the components that go into our products have existed for some time, right? There have been relays, et cetera. But the reality is in the field, these technicians were having to assemble each of these parts together, and that took time. It also took a level of expertise that, as we're seeing a reduction or the continued reduction or labor struggles in the trades field, you need to create some efficiencies everywhere you can. And that's really what happened with our product. We created something that was somewhat different,
Hmm.
but we brought it to a company and listening to them, and they said, "This is a great product. We love this product, but we're really interested with the relay in the box." And that was ultimately became sort of our catch point. We had an aha moment and realized that, by building these in a condensed unit where it is something that they can easily plug and play, it's easy to see how we grabbed the market share so quickly. We weren't first to market necessarily with these relays and these components, but certainly this
Hmm.
relay in a box, this enclosure or enclosed relay was one that we did a great job of taking advantage of from a brand perspective, and go to market.
That's impressive. So let's take a step back for a moment and let's talk about you. Let's move past, who you work for. How did your career path ultimately lead you into manufacturing operations leadership?
Yeah, it's been a funny journey. I ultimately started in sales and then found my way into marketing. I felt like it was a little bit more fun in the tools that you get to play with, right? Whether it's the digital world was really taking foothold into the way we buy, and knowing how that was changing the buyer personality and then the buyer sort of objectives and how they're identifying information. It became a new challenge for me beyond just the challenges of sales. I marched my way through B2B consulting, mostly in the tech side, did a little bit of data analytics, but found my way into manufacturing with functional devices. They're a private equity backed firm faced with needing to reach these new goals, these new growth goals. They've never really had an outbound marketing approach prior to myself. They had a great marketing team in place, but it was a little bit more the traditional marketing, traditional focus in advertising, a lot of sales support. Did great work. Obviously, our brand is, sort of considered the Kleenex or the chapstick, if you will, of our industry. Um,
Okay.
you have professionals out in the field who walk into a distributor and say, "Hey, I need a rib." They may not necessarily be specifically talking about the functional devices relay in a box, but that's just become so synonymous, with the product that's needed, right? So um, it's ultimately taking that transition from being more sales support, and then becoming more tip of the spear. And in turn, it also allowed for me to take, I've got a little bit of an operations mindset. I enjoy tinkering and finding efficiencies and things like that. So joining an organization like Functional Devices in the manufacturing world has been full of wonderful challenges. I mean, manufacturing in its own right is very difficult. There's a lot of moving
Right.
parts, right?
Yep.
Being able to join an organization that's pushing high growth, but also has maturity, has areas of maturity in different sectors has been fun.
That's interesting. So you've stepped into a leadership position at a company with decades of institutional knowledge in an industry, as you mentioned, that doesn't really like to change, but the
Right.
world has changed. It's not, it's in the process of continuing to change. How has AI and those changes in how buyers search, how has that impacted your job and the strategy of your team?
Yeah, the AI storm has been ultimately very challenging to keep up with, right? The moment you think you've got something figured out, you turn the page and you're completely lost again. We're approaching it with an open mind at Functional Devices. It's, understanding that we may not be able to take advantage of everything that AI has to offer, but we're going to investigate. From a marketing specific side of things, we're very aware of how it's changing buying behavior. So the likes of, Google it. That used to be the only phrase that people would think of.
Yep.
Well, that's changing now. So how are we ensuring that our brand is still maintaining a high level of being found when buyers are out there searching for the information they're looking for, right? So it's something that we pay attention to every day and monitor the evolution of how things are happening. And certainly it's a trial and error. There are certain things that are going to work really well for us, and there's going to be others where it's certainly not going to be our flavor.
Right, exactly. You're speaking my own language. We call it search everywhere optimization. So it's not just about search Google optimization or search
Absolutely.
engine optimization. So it's added a whole new level of complexity to maintaining and growing your visibility. So it is very challenging. So you spent a lot of time working inside manufacturing environments. When you think about the companies and teams you've worked with, what patterns or themes tend to show up again and again?
Yeah, so from the perspective of good companies versus okay companies, the difference is there is just what we hit the nail on, right? It was being open to trying new things, but more importantly, what we spoke about a moment ago is being customer centric. So as long as you're focused on the customer, understanding what they're needing and where they're going to find these things, and then making sure we are available to them when they're looking for their answer, their solution, to overcome their challenge. That's allowed for us to not only build a wonderful culture internally, but it's allowed for us to create this staying power. And again, what I would consider is the number one brand in our industry.
Right. Yeah. So what are some of the biggest challenges you would say that functional devices is navigating from a marketing and sales perspective, since that's the area that you're in charge of?
Yeah, it's a good question. Historically, we've focused on selling to distribution, and that only goes so far. You're almost at that point relying on your distribution partners to sell for you, and that's not always going to be the case. So it's been a big pivot for us to get out and what we call create our own demand and really
Hmm.
target those individuals that are searching and utilizing our products. So, when you think about it from the marketing perspective, and we create these wonderful, potentially goofy at times buyer personas, right? So we can get an
Hmm.
understanding of who we're interacting with. We had to do a lot of research and understanding of who these different people are that exist out there that are buying our products. So, it wasn't just our distributors and our partners there. We had to get out and understand the greater market and their pains and challenges that they're facing. That's been ultimately, I would say, our biggest mindset shift. And then the biggest struggle is getting engaged with this larger audience.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So where would you say you see the most friction between engineering, operations, sales, and leadership teams when it comes to implementing your strategies and achieving your growth goals?
You're always going to have the understanding that manufacturing is a bit of a laggard when it comes to adopting change. There's always that mindset of, we've done it this way and it's been great, and we'll continue doing it this way. I would say that's probably been the biggest sort of friction point, is just getting everybody on the same page that there are other ways of doing things and we should be trying them. Doesn't mean we're going
Right.
to move forward with them, but the world of marketing is all about trying, right? The A/B test,
Right.
that's a thing we know as marketers very well. It's not always something that's understood and appreciated elsewhere. So, knowing that we can get out and try things, decide then if it's worthwhile or not, has been probably the biggest challenge internally. And I venture to bet that's probably the case in other manufacturing industries as well, or other manufacturing companies as well.
Right. Yep, for sure. So you've worked alongside many leaders in manufacturing. When you think about the ones who truly stand out throughout your career, what separates them from the rest?
Yeah, it's to me, it's the leaders that understand this concept from a few roles ago, but we called it the virtuous cycle. And it's how happy customers create happy employees create happy customers. And how do you facilitate that? It's investing in the right culture. It's understanding, you know, you've got a type of employee that's going to do well and thrive in the organization. And in turn, that's going to create great customers, happy customers. You're going to produce a great product. In that, with our customer focused approach that we have, our customers are funneling ideas back to us. Everything from, here's a new product idea or a new way to, new feature that maybe you should consider, to perhaps, hey, maybe you should consider executing your services this way. Being able to create that general feedback across the board has been massive to, I think, functional devices success. And ultimately, any organization I've been a part of, they do that. We do it exceptionally well because we foster that. There's good
Okay.
understanding throughout the organization that that is a cycle that has to maintain in order for us to grow and reach our goals.
I agree. That's a really great example. So, Eric, thank you so much for a great conversation today. I have a few more questions, but I really appreciate you sharing your experience and perspective. Before we wrap up, I do want to give our listeners a chance to learn more about you and functional devices. Where is the best place for them to find more information about functional devices?
Always go to our website, functionaldevices.com. We've been spending a lot of time building a lot of thought leadership content. So getting outside of just our products, but more understanding what's happening in the industry.
Right.
From the data center boom that we're experiencing, how the technology is shifting in the world of building automation, and the latest and greatest innovations affecting our industry.
Yep. So that's an easy website to remember,
That's it.
functionaldevices.com. I
That's
like
right.
it. What about if someone wants to connect with you personally?
Find me on LinkedIn, Eric Strickler. It's pretty easy to find.
Yep.
That's probably the best place. I'm very active on that platform. I love to interact with people, network, etc. Always happy to answer questions. Always happy to participate in any number of things. So be glad to do
Okay.
that.
Okay, that's great. We will be sure to include those links in the show notes. And before we close, I always like to end with a reflective question. When you look back on your career in manufacturing, who is one leader who had a lasting impact on how you lead today? And what's the most important lesson you learned from the way they showed up?
It's always easy to go to your boss, right? And I do report to our CEO. But I will say it is, I'm going to follow suit again with that, but because the reality is he is someone that takes a moment to listen. And I feel like that is such an underrated quality, and not listen to hear, but listen to understand. That's such an underrated thing that you experience in today's world. There's great people
Yep.
they're great at compiling numbers or creating strategy and telling a story. But man, that listening to understand is such an underrated quality, and he
Yep.
certainly exemplifies that.
Yeah. I mean, good people are the best leaders. And not
Absolutely.
everybody is.
Yeah,
So we
absolutely.
love highlighting people like that and their stories. Thank you today for such a thoughtful conversation. It's truly been a pleasure having you on the show, and I appreciate you sharing your perspective and experiences from the manufacturing and operations side of your business. And to our listeners for joining us today, if you're enjoying these conversations, I encourage you also to check out recent episodes with previous guests, Joel Onashuk from Formic and Dan Letourneau from Pure Production Solutions, where we're continuing to explore leadership, relationships, and growth inside manufacturing and B2B organizations. Thank you for listening today. In Good Company, where relationships drive results, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you very much, Eric, for joining me.
Thank you, Lisa. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to In Good Company, where relationships drive results, with Lisa Kilray. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay connected and keep building relationships that drive results.